Well, good morning, third grade. I hope you had a wonderful weekend and I hope you treated your mother like gold. I know that my kids did. And today we're going to start talking about mixed numbers. I know that we've mentioned these in school before, but today we're going to really talk about them. Okay, what is a mixed number? Okay, well, whenever you mix something, you're putting two things together. So we're not actually going to mix these numbers, but we are going to put two different kinds of numbers together to make one different number. Okay, what kind of numbers are we going to put together today to make different numbers? Well, we're going to put whole numbers and fractions together to make a mixed number. Okay, a whole number and a fraction together are a mixed number. And we're going to use mixed numbers in order to separate things into equal groups. So, for instance, I have 3 apples here. Okay, I'm going to pretend that I'm going to share these apples with my husband, one other person. So there's 2 of us, but there's 3 apples. So we need to figure out how to equally share these 3 apples. Okay, well, I know that I can give each of us one whole apple. Okay, I can give each of us one whole apple. Now I have 1 apple left. So if there's 2 people, remember the denominator is the number of pieces that you're going to break something into. If there's 2 of us, how many pieces am I going to break this apple into? 2. I just said it. All right, so I'm going to break this apple into 2 pieces and give each of us 1/2. Okay, so now I have 1.5 for me and 1.5 for my husband. Okay, these are called mixed numbers. I have a whole apple and a fraction of an apple. Okay, 1.5. Okay, and obviously I would write that as, I would write that as 1.5. I have 1 whole and 1/2. Okay, 1.5. Together, that number is called a mixed number because I have a whole number and a fraction of a number. Okay, 1.5. Right? 1 whole, 1/2. 1.5 plus 1.5 is going to be 3 wholes. Okay, so if I put this back together, remember 1/2 plus 1/2 is 2 halves, and anytime the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator are the same, it equals 1 whole. Okay, so 2 halves equal 1 whole. Okay, so I have 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3 wholes. Okay, but these are mixed numbers, 1.5 and 1.5, a whole number and a fraction. All right, so let's look at page 522. 522. And it says, how can you use fractions to share equally? Well, I just did that with my apples. Okay, so it says 4 friends have 6 fruit bars to share equally. Okay, so here we have 4 circles that are representing the 4 friends, and then we have the fruit bars underneath it. Okay, it says use 6 rectangles of paper for fruit bars. Okay, you can do this at your house if you have paper, or we can just look at the paper that is represented here in the book. So we have 6 pieces of pink paper, and those represent the fruit bars. Letter B says, do you think each person will get more than or less than 1 whole fruit bar? Well, everybody's going to at least get 1 because there's 4 people and there's 6 fruit bars. So everybody's gonna at least get 1 fruit bar. So it says place a rectangle in each circle. Okay, so everybody's going to get one, just like I did with the apples. Okay, I'm gonna put them into the groups. I know that both me and my husband were gonna get at least 1 apple. Okay, so each friend is going to at least get 1 fruit bar. All right, now it says cut the 2 leftover rectangles in half. Continue to share the fruit bars equally. How many whole fruit bars does each friend get? 1. How many halves? 1. So each friend, just like my apples, each friend gets 1 1/2. Okay, and that is a mixed number. 1 whole fruit bar, 1/2 of a fruit bar. Okay, let's look on page 523. What are mixed numbers? Well, we've kind of already talked about it, but let's look at it in black and white. When you have a fraction that is greater than 1, you can use a mixed number to name the amount. A mixed number has a whole number and a fraction. Example A. How many fruit bars are shown? There is 1 whole fruit bar and 1/2 of another fruit bar. Okay, and how do you write it? 1 1/2. 1 whole fruit bar, 1/2 of a fruit bar. Okay, let's look at example B. How many oranges are shown? Well, there are 3 whole oranges and 2/3 of another orange. Okay, so these oranges may be cut up into pieces, but none of the pieces are missing in 3 of them. So you have 3 out of 3, 3 out of 3, 3 out of 3. And remember, every time the numerator and the denominator are the same, it equals 1. So you have 1 whole orange, 1 whole orange, 1 whole orange, 3 whole oranges, and 2/3 of an orange. So how would you write that? You would write 3 and 2/3. Okay, now remember, you say the word and in between the whole number and the fractions. You say, I have 3 and 2/3 of an orange. Okay, I have 3 whole oranges and 2/3 of an orange. 3 and 2/3. All right, so on check on the bottom of the page, it says write a mixed number for each picture. So I have 1 whole sandwich. Even though it's divided into 4 pieces, all of them are there. So it's 1 whole sandwich and 3/4 of a sandwich because they're divided into 4 pieces. Okay, so 1 3/4. The pizza is divided into 6 pieces, so I have 1 1/6. The orange juice, I have 2 whole glasses and 1/2 of a glass, so 2 1/2. All right, so you are going to continue today and do the same exact thing. Let me see what your homework is. You're going to do the same exact thing on practice A and B on page 524. Okay, you're going to write mixed numbers, a whole number and a fraction, for A and B. Okay, all right, so for tomorrow or later today, it's up to you, we're going to go to page 528, and this is a problem-solving strategy. Okay, remember, when we have a problem-solving strategy, it's taking what we know and then using it. Okay, remember, it doesn't matter what you know if you can't use it. Okay, that's wisdom, taking what you know and using it to make the right choices. All right, so how do you solve a simpler problem? Let's look under learn. It says, how do you solve a simpler problem? Shapes within shapes. You can find larger squares made up of small squares in this quilt. How many squares are in the quilt? So you're going to have to count the solid squares and the patterned squares and put those all together. And that's going to be your denominator, right? Okay. And let's read and understand. What do you know? A square, so this is 1 square, so you have the quilt square. A square has 4 sides of the same length. Squares can be different sizes. Find the number of squares in the quilt. What are you trying to find? So it says, what strategy will you use? I can look for squares inside of squares, okay? So this is a little bit of a tricky problem. Now, it's probably one of those problems that you would have in like a brain games book, because it's not exactly what you think. So you could count the squares, but then you also have to remember that there's one big square, right? And then inside of the square, you can see bigger squares. Okay, you have small squares and then there's some big squares. Okay, so I can look for squares inside of squares. I have squares with sides of 1 unit. Then I have squares with sides of 2 units. I have the 9 1x1 squares, so the little squares. Then I have 4 2x2 squares and 1 3x3 square. Okay, so if I add all of those size squares together, how many squares do I have? I have 14 squares inside of that problem. So when you first look at it, it might look like, oh, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 squares. But you have to look deeper, okay? So, why do I add, under talk about it, why do I add to solve this problem? Well, after finding how many of each size square, you need to find the total. Okay, so in your practice, it says solve, write the answers in a complete sentence. Okay, you are going to do the odd number of these on page 529. Okay, obviously all of them, because there aren't that many. So you're going to be doing 3 and 5. So you only have 2 problems to do today, or for Wednesday. All right, so let's do number 2 together, since that's not part of your homework. It says, how many triangles are in the figure? Hint, look for a large triangle as well as small triangles. Okay, so I have my triangle. If you look at it on number 2, I have 1 large triangle, so I can write that down, 1 large triangle. Then I have the 1, 2, 3, 4 small triangles inside of it. So I have the 1 large triangle, and then I have the 4 small triangles inside of it. So added together, I have 5 triangles inside of that triangle. All right, so for number 3, you're going to do Rachel had an apple. She cut it in half, then cut each piece in half again. She ate one of the pieces of apples. How many pieces did Rachel have left? So you can either visualize this with an apple, or you can draw it and then take one away. Number 5, Chris made 9 pancakes. He took 3 of 3 and gave an equal number to each of his 2 sisters. There were no pancakes left. How many pancakes did each sister get? All right, so it might be helpful to draw that out and then figure it out that way. All right, so that is your homework for tomorrow, or if you want to do it later today. I hope you did your math practice yesterday on Math Practice Monday, and you have time now to start on your homework if you started this right at the beginning of our class, and I will see you in a few minutes.